Hello, friends. I'm Carrie Farr. Welcome to In Your Corner. My good friend, Kate Janson, joins me, and she's written this incredible book, The Gift of Desperation. Now, I haven't read the book, so I'm going to allow... Well, first of all, welcome, Kate. So nice to see you.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about your life and about your book.
Well, first I have to say thank you. This has been such a lovely time. This, In Your Corner TV, that in itself is such a blessing. To think that the Lord's in our corner, right?
Amen.
So The Gift of Desperation, it's the true story of God's grace alive and alive. And that really is the message that's in this book. I have a story of a modern-day Mary Magdalene.
Wow. But, I mean, you look so perfect right now. And you mean to tell me, because I've heard a little bit of your story, there was a time when you were really like a drunk?
Oh, I was a drunk. Yeah, drunk and drugs and promiscuous lifestyle. Abortion is in the story. It started so I picked up a drink at 12 years old.
Yeah.
And, when I got to alcohol at 12 and drank that concoction that I made down, I felt that burn.
Yeah.
But I also felt that peace. And I went, oh my gosh, I want to feel like this all the time.
Took your sorrow away at 12.
At 12. And,
Wow.
when you think about it, you kind of go, well, I did not have a traumatic childhood, but at 6 o'clock, my parents checked out. They had their treat, their 2 cocktails, which were bombs. And the house was, it was not a happy home, the stresses of life, et cetera, et cetera. But I, as an alcoholic, I believe I was born that way. And I always demanded to have this center. I needed to be the center of attention.
Yeah.
I needed to have constant accolade. And they, were doing the best that they could to raise a family. There were 5 of us, 4 boys, and I was the only girl. And so by the time I got to 12, I was a redhead as a little one, and kids picked on me. I never felt like I fit in, so I was always trying to fit in. And then when I drank that alcohol, I felt like, I fit in. I'm funny enough. I'm pretty enough. I'm smart enough. And it was all a lie, but that's what it did for me. And so I was off and running. I was... some people say that they drank for a while and then it got really bad. I had that instant. I drank until I couldn't drink anymore.
Really? Oh, wow.
And
drank until you passed out.
Yeah, and this was as a young girl. Now, obviously, I was only drinking on the weekends. I wasn't, I couldn't drink during the week or anything, but it continued, and it grew, and pot became a part of the story. And I, when I was 17, it was this progression of loss of values, and so I was with a fella and ended up being pregnant. And so I made the choice. I felt like I couldn't tell my parents, it would destroy them. That was what I thought. I didn't have the kind of communication where I could talk to them. And so I made a decision. And, you think about what children have to face today to make adult decisions. But I did. And after that, I was devastated.
So you had an abortion.
I had an abortion,
Yeah.
yes. And I thought, I've done the worst thing I could ever possibly do, so now it doesn't matter what I do.
What do you do? Let me come back to you and let you pick up on that for a second, because I would like to just share a little information. Friends, I know that it's almost every family now that has a member that's had an abortion. Mm-hmm. I've had the pleasure of interviewing Alveda King,
Yes.
Dr. Martin Luther King's niece, and Dr. Martin Luther King Sr. was her father. And she grew up in a Christian home. And Dr. Alveda King had 2 abortions as a young woman. Mm-hmm. And she said, Dr. Martin Luther King Sr. taught me about repentance. Mm-hmm. She said, I repented of my sins and turned my back on that. And you know, as well as I do, today, Dr. Alveda King is one of the foremost, pro-life proponents in America.
Mhm.
I've had Victoria Robinson on several times.
Yes, she's wonderful.
I've had Jennifer O'Neill, the Hollywood actress. All of these women have had abortions, but they went to the Lord and they asked the Lord to forgive them. And I know that there's some people out there that cannot share their story because it's so painful. But I want to let you know, and I'm going to let Kate pick up on this. I want to let you know that God will forgive you of what you've done, and He will cleanse you. And if you share your story, He will even use you to tell others about Him. So pick up from there. And
I thank you for that, because at the end of the day, that is the reason why I wrote this book. So I'll finish the rest of the journey here, and it continued.
yeah,
The end. It continued with more destruction and more devastation. And at the end of my drinking, I was 29 years old. My brother was killed in a hit-and-run accident.
oh,
But one of the things that, going back to what I said when I was 17, was that it was all open territory. I was just, it didn't matter, right? Because I did the worst thing that I could ever possibly do. The shame, the guilt, the self-hate, the remorse. Pouring alcohol, thinking that if I get enough alcohol in my system, maybe I'll forget, and getting up and doing this time it's going to be different, the insanity of that over and over again. So when it came to 1990, my brother was killed in a hit-and-run accident. It was devastating for me, and as well as for my family.
of course, yeah.
And so I was in this spin. But the thing that I always like to point out is that I didn't drink the way that I drank because my brother died in a car accident. But one of the gifts of the awakenings was that I realized that I was using that as yet another excuse. And that was one of the chinks that the Lord gave me that said, you can't keep going on like this. Just because your brother died is not a reason for you not to be accountable for your life. And so there were like these little moments of clarity. And then when I got to, I'd taken a man hostage who was a part of my history when my brother was alive. And when I took him hostage, he...
You want to elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, I was so trying to grab onto the life I had with my brother to keep his memory alive. And I'm drinking like a mad woman and drugging, and so we had a group of friends back in the day, right? But I'm now 28 years old and, 29 at that point, and still trying to grab hold to a memory, to hold on to him, to keep him alive in my mind. It was just very delusional, but that's how I felt. So this fella that I used to, date or whatever you want to call it, it really wasn't dating. And he was back in the picture, but he was married. And so not in a good marriage, and I didn't really, the loss of values, the loss of my moral compass, not that I really had one to begin with that was all that strong if I'm drinking at 12 years old, but, I didn't think that I would go to all those lengths that I went to based on my drinking and drugging. So when I say I took him hostage, I took him hostage. I moved him to Massachusetts, was going to help him get a job. He left his wife. We have this couple of month fling, I guess, and I send him back on a Greyhound bus because I realized he drank more than I did.
Wow.
And so when I sent him home, I was pregnant.
Oh, my.
So I went to this church, and it's a Catholic church. There was this cross in the center of the church, and I walk in, and the sermon is on abortion. And I am beside myself, and I have the appointment scheduled for Tuesday. And
For another abortion.
For another abortion. And it was there as I sat in the back of that church that I was just weeping and I looked at that cross because it was always a church that I would go to where I would feel his presence. And I felt a love, and I didn't understand it, but whenever I needed that peace, I would just sit in church. And I said, I have no business being here, but I am not letting go. You're all I have. He was all I have. And so, the gift of desperation was that point when I had nothing left. And so I actually did have that abortion. I said to myself, I can't take care of myself. How can I take care of someone else? So I rationalized and justified it. And through that series, and I believe because of that surrender that day in that church, the Lord took me, and it was a month later that I was in a rehab. And I got sober, and I was desperate to get sober. I was going to do anything that you told me to do. The redemption of the Lord is this. That shame, that guilt, that self-hate, that promiscuous lifestyle, I could not stop that on my own. I tried for 17 years. I tried to be the woman that I thought would be, a good version or a good, successful woman. And I didn't know how to do it. And until I surrendered, until I said, I truly cannot do this, I don't have another good idea, then the Lord could come in. And when he came in, it was this, I had faith in the Lord, but I did not have a relationship with him. And that's what this journey is about. In sobriety, I then came into a relationship with the Lord through a series of years, really. But every step, he met me. Every moment, every lesson that had to be learned, they were like kisses on the cheek. I could see him alive in the miracles, the simple little miracles that no one else would know, but it was Taylor for me.
Kate, would you hold your mic up just a little closer to your mouth?
Sure.
I'm afraid we won't have audio. And obviously you're very intelligent. I can sit here and listen to you, and you're very intelligent. But intelligence, wealth, whatever it is, fame, will not rescue you from the pit of hell where you were at.
Mm-hmm.
But the Lord reached down and saved your soul. Mm-hmm. Tell us about the last 30 years and the growth that you've had since that day.
Well, it's been, he restores beauty for ashes, and Isaiah, I love that. It's this. When I was a little girl, I was so happy. I was filled with joy. I would get excited about a song on the radio or the first snowfall. And I lost all of that throughout all those years. And I don't know why I'm welling up, but that's what he gave back to me. He gave me back my joy. He gave me a sense of identity. I didn't know what self-esteem was. I really didn't know how to do a lot of the simple things that one would know how to do because my solution to everything was just life was a party,
Yeah.
Where do you go after the party was over? I was at the end of myself, so now he was building the woman that he needed me to be. But I will tell you this, that I would not change all of that wreckage because it is the greatest gift that I have today to help another woman that felt the way that I felt, feels the way that I feel, has gone through what I've gone through. And when you're sitting there and you're filled with all of the self-hate, I can talk to her because of my story. I walked in her shoes.
Yeah, you certainly
did. I'm
did.
not reading a book and
No,
telling her
no,
how
it's your
to do
life.
it.
This
It's
is your
my
life story. But how do you help, because I've interviewed a lot of women that have had abortions. Mm-hmm. And there is like the most intense pain, sorrow, and guilt. Mm-hmm. How do you help somebody overcome the guilt that they've gone through? And obviously the Lord's healed you through this process, mm-hmm. but how would somebody find forgiveness?
Well, the first step is to ask the Lord. And through that, in church, they have all sorts of Bible studies that will take you. I can't tell you how many I saw when I would go to different, churches and so forth that had healing from abortion. So for me, that was something that first I had to acknowledge that it was real, that I really did do this. I made the choice to end a life and then ask for the Lord's forgiveness. In my case, a lot of my journey was through Alcoholics
Yeah.
Anonymous. And so there's, the 4-step, and there's a whole process that takes you through that journey. But I needed more, even as I was sober, even as time went on, I still needed healing from that. I needed to really feel as though the Lord, like what happened, stop staying in that sense of delusion and I can't go there. It's too painful. And then when I went through this Bible study, it was beautiful. And they took me on a journey that took me inside where I could actually see my children in the arms of Jesus.
Oh, wow.
And that was really where the healing took place. And to acknowledge them. The beauty is I talk about the story where when I'm in that clinic, how I was able to understand that he came in and he was in that room, but not for me. And not that he wasn't there to love me, but he was there for that baby.
Yes.
And to take that baby to heaven. And that they will be there. Those little lives will be there. And they've forgiven us. It's us that have to forgive.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's all sorts of options for people. But until they ask the Lord, until they acknowledge that this was a sin that they had done and that they want to be forgiven for it, and once they are forgiven for it, where do you want me to go, Lord? He will direct you. He will show you where to go. Be it that it's the church, be it that it's, another program that they have. You mentioned Victoria Robinson. Kat Kerr, has wonderful ministries. There's all sorts of things on YouTube that can take you through healing.
In fact, I'm going to ask where they can get that. But on our website, inyourcorner.tv, we've got at least 10 interviews of women and men who have been involved in abortion, and they talk about how they found forgiveness. How would somebody connect with you, one, to get your wonderful book?
Thank you.
And then two, the Gift of Desperation. And then two, if, I know that you do some counseling with people. So how would somebody connect with you, Kate Janson?
So there's a website that's called, it's www.godsgracealiveandalife, all one word, .com. And that's my website, and it has all of my information on there. Follow my journey, because my next book that's coming out is going to be my story. My husband and I got married late in life, and we adopted through the foster care system, and there will be more information on that on the new book, and that's going to be another story that really talks to, there's the pro-life and there's the pro-choice movement, and on the pro-choice movement, they say that the pro-lifers don't care about the children that have been born, and the truth is that we do. But we need to do a better job of caring for the orphans. And so it's journey. It's coming together now as we speak. And so
there you go.
Check me online.
Now, let me ask you this. There's got to be something that I haven't asked you that our audience needs to know about you, Kate. What would that be?
Wow, that's a good question. I
Or your
guess
story.
I think that the biggest thing is that to think that, I didn't look like I was on the streets. I had a good career. I was in sales for the hotel business, and everything was wrapped around it. But I went through those 20s where all of my friends were moving on. If you're finding that you're stuck, if you're finding that you're like at a point where you just can't keep getting, any further down, ask for help. That's the most important thing. We don't, our pride, that's why they say it's the number one thing. I'm so grateful that I asked for help, and I'm so grateful that the help was there. God will give you the help. Ask Jesus for it and He will bring it in ways in which you never could have imagined. And you'll have a peace that you've been so searching for. It'll be right there. Trust me. I lived it.
You lived it. You lived it for sure. Now, if somebody wanted to invite you to speak, would they still go to the same website? Can you tell them that website again, please?
Yeah, it's www.godsgracealiveandalive.com.
Yeah. And so what are you doing today with the book and your life?
Well, I'm actually doing some retreats, working with some different groups where I'm able to take the book and come in. I'm also working with a group of women. I have a wonderful group of women that we all write. We're called the Warrior Writers, and we're under Light Warrior Publishing. And so we've all gotten together and written two books that are called Resilience 1 and Resilience 2. And they are 14 stories in each book. Mine is in the second book called Resilience 2. And they have stories of kingdom impact. The first book is on overcoming incredible obstacles. And the second book is on love, family, and endurance. So I'm working on that project, and it's been so much fun. Please take a look on Amazon. They're both there. We just launched it at National Religious Broadcasters, and we were number one. Well, we were number one for new release and number one for women authors. So take a look at that.
Would they find that at Amazon?
Book. Amazon.
Now, tell us the name of it again.
Resilience 1 and Resilience 2.
I don't even know how to spell resilience.
Oh, and I said resilient. It's by Missy Maxwell Wharton and Donna Best. They were the authors on the book, but we all have our story of they're good stories. So
yeah, so go to Amazon.com and buy Resilience 1 and Resilience 2, right?
Right.
What else is going on?
Those are pretty much it. Like I said, I'm working on that second book, and that keeps me pretty busy. You know, the beauty of writing your book is that you also get to really heal up in ways in which you never thought. I work with, as I said, a group of women that are authors, and the Warrior Writers is under Missy Maxwell Wharton. And it's this journey of taking this story of God that's alive in your life, in my case, and then going in and really getting the healing that needs to be done. It's one thing to go and talk about it. It's a whole nother thing when you have to write about it and take someone on the journey with you. So that was really special.
I'm sure it is. And of course, I've met your friend Missy. She's in the studio today. And you and her live in the Nashville, Tennessee area. You actually live in the coolest town in America, I think. But you live in the Nashville, Tennessee area. And so if somebody wanted to connect with the both of you to be part of this group or tell their story, how would they do that?
Well, they could, again, go to www.godsgracealiveandalive.com, or they could go to Warrior Writers if they Googled that.
Did you say Warrior Writers?
Warrior
Yeah.
Writers. Missy Maxwell Wharton. Actually, the website is missymaxwellwharton.com.
Well, all right. Fabulous. Well, Kate, I can't tell you what a honor, what a joy it's been to have you on In Your Corner today. Thank you so much for joining us. I pray that the Lord uses you and Missy both mightily, and I pray that everything that you do is a great success.
Thank you so much.
You're certainly
Thank
welcome.
you.
Friends, thank you so much for watching our program today. We'll see you next time on the next edition of In Your Corner.